Some minds don't sleep, they remember.
Rome, an empire built of blood, steel, and structures that challenged time itself. The arenas where crowds roared, the aqueducts that stretched out with pride, the legions that conquered the world under their heels. But that is only what Rome wanted you to see. Behind the marble walls, in the dimly lit rooms, another empire was being shaped, not by the sword, but by caresses, not by rousing speeches, but by calculated whispers on silk beds. In Rome, power and pleasure were two sides of the same coin. And sometimes, the most ruthless wars were not fought on the battlefield, but in the darkness of private chambers, where the fate of an entire empire was decided by desire. Tonight, we will pull back the curtain of history, stepping into the hidden corners that even historians hesitate to mention. This is not a story of heroes or great battles. This is the story of the empire of lustware. The bedroom became the arena, and whispers could topple a throne. If you are brave enough to face the dark secrets of Rome, press the subscribe button and step into the darkness with me. Rome. Who were the Romans, really? In the introduction, we stood before a tempting door, leading into the private chambers of an empire. The bedroom was not just a place of rest, but an arena of power, where the destiny of an entire nation could be determined by whispers in the dark. But before we dare to step through that door, before we explore the secrets hidden behind the marble walls, we need to better understand the people who created that empire. Who were the Romans, really? Were they invincible warriors, great architects? Were the lawmakers who laid the foundation for all of Western civilization? Or were they something more complex, more profound, and perhaps darker? To answer this question, we need to go back in time, not to a glorious empire, but to a much more humble beginning. Imagine a small, unremarkable village nestled on 7 hills by the Tiber River around the 8th century BC. Huts made of mud and reeds, muddy dirt roads, and a people who lived by farming and herding. That was Rome, before it became a symbol of power and glory. A place where no one, not even those who lived there, could imagine that it would one day rule the world. So, how did this unknown village become an empire stretching from the hot deserts of Syria to the misty lands of Britain? How did these simple farmers build the arenas, the aqueducts, and a legal system that still influences us today? The answer does not lie with a heroic king or an invincible army. It lies in the very character of the Roman people. Above all, they were a people of pragmatism. They did not dream of lofty ideals like the Greeks, who were passionate about philosophy and art. The Romans were engineers, builders, problem solvers. When they conquered a new land, they did not rush to build magnificent temples to honor the gods. Instead, they built roads, aqueducts, and fortresses to ensure that the land became an organic part of the empire, connected and exploited in the most efficient way. They were brilliant politicians, with an incredible ability to adapt and absorb. Unlike many other empires, the Romans did not impose their culture on the peoples they conquered. Instead, they learned, borrowed, and improved. They took the gods of the Greeks, changed their names. Uspa became Jupiter. Aphrodite became Venus and made them part of the Roman faith. They absorbed the engineering knowledge of the Etruscans, improved it, and built even greater works, like aqueducts tens of miles long, carrying water from distant mountains to supply millions of people. The Romans were a cultural sponge, absorbing the best of every people they conquered and turning it into their own strength. But their greatness was not only in their constructions or victories, it was also in how they organized their society, a system of clear, harsh, and unforgiving class division. At the top of Roman society were the patricians, the ancient families who held land, political power, and religious privileges. They were the ones who shaped policies, led armies, and controlled the Senate, the heart of Roman politics. Below them were the plebeians, free people, but without the privileges of the nobility. They were the farmers, artisans, merchants, and soldiers. They had to fight constantly to gain every bit of rights, from the right to be elected to public office, to the right to be protected by law. Their struggle lasted for centuries, and although they eventually gained more rights, the line between them and the patricians always remained clear, and at the very bottom of society were the slaves. They were not considered human beings, but speaking tools, as the Roman philosopher Varro called them. They were property, to be bought, sold, used, and treated like living machines. They worked in the quarries, built the great monuments, and served in the homes of the elite. The greatness of Rome, the arenas, the palaces, the roads, was built on their sweat, blood, and lives. In this society, your status at birth determined almost every aspect of your life. It determined where you lived, the work you did, the person you married, and most importantly for our story tonight, it determined who you were allowed to love and how. Because for the Romans, love and especially lust was not a pure personal emotion, not moments of romance or stirrings of the heart. It was a tool, a means to consolidate power, increase status, and protect a legacy. In Rome, love was not an act of the heart, it was an act of will, a move in the game of power. A marriage in the patrician class was not the union of two kindred souls, it was a business contract, a political alliance carefully calculated to consolidate the power of two families. The children born from these marriages were not the fruit of love, but pawns in a power game that spanned generations. A son could be raised to become a general, a senator, or even an emperor. A daughter could be used to tighten an alliance with another family, ensuring loyalty or resources. And the act of sex, for a free Roman man, was not judged based on whom he slept, with man or woman, wife or slave. What mattered was his role in the act. Long as he was the dominant one, the active one, his masculinity and honor were preserved. Conversely, any sign of passivity or submission was considered despicable, an insult to the status of a Roman citizen. This is a completely different worldview, where modern concepts of love, equality, or consent hardly existed. The bedroom in Roman society was not a refuge from the calculations of the outside world. It was an arena, a stage where power games were played as subtly and ruthlessly as on the battlefield or in the Senate. Every caress, every whisper could carry a deeper meaning, a conspiracy, an alliance, or a betrayal. The thought that even the most intimate, most private moments of human life could be turned into an instrument of power, does it make you feel a little uneasy? Does it make you wonder if in our modern society, with all its romantic stories of true love, the calculations of status, money, and power are still silently shaping our relationships? Think about it. When you choose someone to love, to marry, or to share your life with, do you ever ask yourself, is that choice truly your own? Or has it been shaped by the invisible pressures of society, of family, or of expectations you don't even realize you have? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. A like and a subscription to the channel will be a sign that you are also digging deeper with me into the mysteries of humanity that lies beneath the surface of relationships and empires. If sex and love in Rome were a game of power, what were its rules? Who was allowed to play? And who had to pay the price? In the next part, we will step into the heart of this game. We will explore the rules of desire, the rules that shaped not only the bedroom, but the very fate of one of the greatest civilizations in history. The rules of desire. In the previous part, we explored the true nature of the Romans' pragmatic people, engineers of power, who built an empire not only with swords, but also with their ability to adapt and control. But more importantly, we realized a disturbing truth. For the Romans, love and lust were not stirrings of the heart. They were instruments of the will, moves in a ruthless game of power. And like any power game, desire in Rome was governed by rules. Not the laws carved in stone in the forum, where the public could see and revere them, but the invisible, unwritten rules whispered in private rooms, passed down from generation to generation, and enforced with a ruthlessness no less than that of battles on the field. Tonight, we will step deeper into the heart of this game. We'll explore the rules of desire, the rules that shaped not only the most intimate relationships of the Romans, but also the fate of the empire they built. And you will see these rules were not only complex, but also harsh, cold, and at times more brutal than any law ever enacted. Let's start with the most basic division. A red line drawn not by gender, age, or ethnicity, but by status. Are you a free person or a slave? No, Roman society, the answer to this question not only determined your life, but completely shaped how you were allowed or not allowed to experience desire. For a slave, whether male or female, the world of desire had no rules, not because they were free to explore, but because they had no freedom at all. Their bodies did not belong to them. It was the property of their master. They could be used, abused, bought, and sold like an item in the slave market of Rome. In the world of the Romans, the concept of consent or rape did not exist in the relationship between master and slave. A slave had no right to say no. Their silence, their submission, was part of the invisible foundation that supported the greatness of Rome, the arenas, the palaces, and the pleasures of the elite. Imagine a slave girl working in a noble house. She might be the one serving wine at lavish parties or cleaning the marble statues in the candlelight. But when night fell, she could be called into her master's bedroom, and there were no laws to protect her. There was no court, no justice. She was a speaking tool, and her body was a piece of property that the master could use as he wished. This is the cold reality of Rome, a reality that we, with our modern mindset, might find barbaric. But for the Romans, this was the natural order of the world and order, built on domination and submission. For a free Roman citizen, the game of desire became much more complex. There was no single set of laws for everyone. Instead, there were two completely different sets of rules, one for women and one for men. These rules not only reflected gender inequality, but were also a tool to maintain social order and the power of the elite. Let's start with the married Roman woman, known as a matrona. In Roman society, the ideal for her was encapsulated in one word: pudicachia, chastity, modesty, and virtue. A matrona was not just a wife, but a symbol of family honor. Her main duties were to produce legitimate children to continue the family line, manage the household quietly, and maintain a perfect image of fidelity. But this fidelity was not a choice. It was a mandatory command, enforced by both society and family. Any suspicion about a matrona's loyalty could lead to disastrous consequences. She could be divorced by her husband in public humiliation, stripped of all rights, and cast out of high society. In some rare but terrifying cases, she could be killed by her own father or brother to cleanse the stain on the family. In ancient Roman law, the right of the father or husband over the family's honor was sometimes placed even higher than the woman's life. She lived in a gilded cage, where beauty, virtue, and submission were non-negotiable requirements. A matrona could be admired, praised, but she was never truly free. Every action, every word, every glance of hers was monitored, not just by her husband, but by all of Roman society, always ready to judge. Now, let's turn to the free Roman man, especially the husband of the matrona. He was also bound by rules, but they were so different they almost belonged to another world. Now, the woman was bound by fidelity, the man was encouraged, even expected, to seek pleasure outside of marriage, with slaves, with prostitutes, with lovers of a lower class, sometimes even with other men. This is where we must confront an aspect of Roman culture that is most difficult for the modern mind to understand: their view on same-sex relationships. In Roman society, the morality of a sexual act was not determined by the gender of the two participants, but by their role in the act. The masculinity virtues of a Roman man was defined by dominance, control, and the ability to impose his will on others. A free man could have sex with another man, usually a slave, or a male prostitute, or someone of a lower status, as long as he was in the active, penetrating position. This act did not diminish his masculinity. On the contrary, it reinforced it. as an assertion of power, a way to demonstrate his dominance over the body and will of another. But if a free Roman citizen voluntarily placed himself in the passive position, accepting the submissive role, it was an unforgivable crime. In the eyes of the Romans, this act was not just a moral violation, but a feminization, a disgrace greater than losing a battle on the field. It threatened his honor, his status, and his very essence as a Roman man. Do you see it? The entire moral system of the Romans revolved around a single axis: power and dominance. Who is in control? Who's being controlled? These questions not only shaped relationships in the bedroom, but also shaped how the Romans operated their society. From the Senate to the battlefield, from noble houses to the slave markets, a free Roman man could do almost anything he wanted, as long as he maintained a position of dominance. A Roman woman, even a noble matrona, was bound by harsh rules to protect the honor of her family and lineage. A slave, regardless of gender, had no choice, no voice, no dignity. These rules were not just social norms. They were instruments of control, designed to maintain the order of an empire built on class division and domination. In the world of the Romans, desire was never just desire. It was a way to consolidate power, to maintain status, and to ensure that the social order was not disturbed. These rules, with their extreme inequality and cruel double standards, can make us shudder to think about them. A world where love and desire are turned into instruments of power. Where intimacy is dominated by status and dominance, it seems strange, almost barbaric to us. But let's be honest with ourselves tonight. Have we really escaped the echoes of Rome? Think about our society today. The way a woman with many partners is often judged much more harshly than a man. The way the concept of masculinity is still often associated with strength, control, and not being allowed to show weakness. Or the way people in lower social classes, though not slaves, are still often deprived of a voice in power relationships. Have we really moved far beyond the rules of Rome? Or have we simply hidden them under more sophisticated guises, the stories of love and freedom that we tell ourselves? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. A like and a subscription will be a sign that you are also digging deep with me into the hidden corners of history and humanity. Tell me, what do you see when you look at these rules? They make you feel uneasy? Or are they just a part of human nature, regardless of the era? Rules are made to be broken, especially by the most powerful, those at the pinnacle of Roman society. When the rules of the bedroom were violated, sometimes they didn't just shake a family's honor. They could shake an entire empire. In the next part, we will step into the Roman political arena, where love and lust became weapons as sharp as the swords of the gladiators. We will discover how intimate relationships were used to manipulate, overthrow, and shape the destiny of one of the greatest civilizations in history. Love, lust, and politics. In the previous part, we entered a world shaped by the invisible laws of desire, world of double standards, where masculinity meant dominance, and the body of a slave was worth no more than an item in a warehouse. Those rules, harsh and cold, kept Roman social order from collapsing. But they were also invisible chains that bound both hearts and bodies. But there was another unwritten rule, a rule only for those at the pinnacle of power. Rules are made to be broken. In the world of emperors, senators, and empresses, love and lust were not just tools, they were sharp weapons, capable of building or destroying an entire empire. Tonight, we will leave the bedrooms of ordinary people to enter another battlefield. A battlefield where conquests required no swords, but were carried out with meaningful glances, whispers in the dark, and caresses carrying deadly calculations. Where alliances were not sealed with blood on parchment, but with vows sworn on silk beds. When the sheets become the battlefield and the bedroom becomes the center of power, join me in exploring the stories where love and lust were not just emotions, but decisive moves that determined the fate of the entire ancient world. Let's start with the greatest and most political love story of the ancient world: Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. When these two names are mentioned, We often imagine a classic romantic tale, an invincible Roman general conquered by the beauty, intelligence, and charm of an Egyptian queen. A story of passion that transcended all boundaries, of love triumphing over all obstacles. But that is only the surface, the veneer that history and romantic tales have painted. Look deeper, and you will see a different truth. This was not just a love story. This was a brilliant geopolitical merger, an alliance carefully calculated to change the map of the world. Let's set the scene. In 48 BC, Julius Caesar had just won the Roman Civil War, defeating Pompey and consolidating his position as the most powerful man in Rome. But his power was not absolute. He needed money to maintain his army, food to feed Rome, and an alliance strong enough to deter enemies, both foreign and domestic. Egypt, with its unimaginable wealth and its reputation as the breadbasket of the ancient world, was the key to his ambitions. On the other side, Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, was in a precarious situation. At 21 years old, she was threatened by her own brother, Ptolemy XIII, her ruler, who was plotting to overthrow her and seize the throne for himself. Cleopatra needed a military ally strong enough to protect her. And no one was more suitable than Caesar, the man who commanded the most formidable legions in the world. They didn't just see each other as lovers, they saw in each other an opportunity. An opportunity to consolidate power, to expand influence, and to rewrite history. The story goes that Cleopatra, with great boldness and intelligence, had herself wrapped in a carpet and secretly brought to Caesar's room in Alexandria. When the carpet was unrolled, she appeared not as a queen begging for help, but as a gift, an irresistible temptation. That was not an act of weakness or desperation. It was a masterful political move, a demonstration of Cleopatra's confidence and manipulative skills. Their affair not only produced a son, Caesarion, whom Cleopatra declared to be the heir of both Caesar and the Egyptian throne. It also created a geopolitical alliance that changed the fate of the entire Mediterranean. Caesar gained the wealth of Egypt, from gold and silver to wheat. To consolidate his power in Rome, Cleopatra gained the protection of the Roman legions, ensuring that her throne would not be shaken. Their love, if it can be called love, was a contract, and Caesarion was the seal that confirmed that contract. But the story doesn't end there. When Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, Cleopatra did not sink into grief like a lover who had lost her beloved. She quickly pivoted, seeking a new partner to protect her interests. That person was Mark Antony, a powerful Roman general who would later become one of the 3 members of the Second Triumvirate. With Antony, Cleopatra continued to play her game, using her charm and intellect to strengthen Egypt's position in a volatile world. If the story of Caesar and Cleopatra shows how lust could be used to build an alliance, the next story is about using the image of a pure love to stabilize an entire empire. Let's turn to Augustus and Livia, the couple who defined the golden age of Rome. After decades of bloody civil war, Octavian, who later took the title Augustus, became the first emperor of Rome. But he understood that his power was not based solely on military strength. After years of chaos, the people of Rome longed for peace, stability, and a return to the traditional values they believed had been tarnished by the elite. To consolidate his power, Augustus needed something more than victories on the battlefield. He needed the trust of the people. And how did he achieve that? Through a brilliant PR campaign centered on his marriage to Livia Drusilla, Augustus and Livia built their image as a perfect couple, a living symbol of traditional Roman values: fidelity, modesty, and devotion to family. Livia was not portrayed as a lavish, ambitious queen like Cleopatra. Instead, she was depicted as a model matron, ideal wife who wove her husband's clothes with her own hands, managed the household quietly, and always stood behind Augustus as a loyal supporter. Their home on the Palatine Hill was not a magnificent palace, but a relatively modest residence, designed to reinforce their image as guardians of ancient Roman values. Their marriage, which lasted over 50 years, became a symbol of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace-on era of stability and prosperity after decades of war and chaos. But behind that curtain of perfection was a much more complex reality. Livia was not just a virtuous wife. She was one of Augustus's most astute and ruthless political advisors. Ancient historians like Tacitus and Cassius Dio recorded rumors that Livia did not hesitate to eliminate anyone who stood in her husband's way, including Augustus's potential heirs, such as Marcellus or Gaius and Lucius Caesar. Whether these rumors were the product of political rivals, they show one truth. Livia was not a passive figure. She was a powerful partner, a companion in Augustus's political chess game. Their marriage was not just a personal relationship. It was a perfectly staged play, performed for the entire empire to see. With the goal of consolidating power and bringing stability to a weary Rome. But if love and lust could be used to build alliances or stabilize an empire, they could also become weapons of destruction. Let's turn to another darker story, which took place on the island of Capri, where Emperor Tiberius Augustus's successor retreated in his final years. According to ancient historians like Suetonius and Tacitus, Capri under Tiberius became a hell of lust. They described endless debauched parties, where wine flowed like rivers, brutal sexual acts involving even children, and horrific scenes that would make even the Romans, accustomed to licentiousness, shudder. The Paradise Island, with its white cliffs and blue sea, was said to have turned into a place where lust had no limits, where the absolute power of an emperor led to absolute depravity. But we must ask the question, are these stories true? Or were they just malicious rumors spread by Tiberius's political rivals in Rome to destroy his reputation? In a society where honor and public image were everything, accusations of moral decay were a powerful weapon. Tiberius, a reclusive man who was not popular with the Roman aristocracy, was the perfect target for such slander. By painting the image of an emperor wallowing in lust, his enemies could undermine his authority, shake the loyalty of the people, and justify plots to overthrow him. The truth probably lies somewhere between fact and fiction. But the story of Capri shows one thing clearly. In the Roman political world, your bedroom was never your own. Your deepest secrets, true or false, could be dragged into the light, turned into a weapon to destroy you. It's not for morality, not for justice, but for power. A love affair could merge to empires like Caesar and Cleopatra. A marriage could stabilize a nation like Augustus and Livia. And rumors of lust could bring down an emperor like Tiberius on the Isle of Capri. These stories, though thousands of years old, do they feel a bit familiar to you? Think about our world today, the sex scandals of leaders, the rumors spread on social media, the personal secrets exposed to ruin someone's career. Are the bedrooms of the powerful truly private, or are they still a battlefield where secrets can be used as weapons to shape political events? And where, in your opinion, should the line between a leader's private and public life be drawn? When does a personal act become a public matter? When do love, lust, or even rumors become a tool to manipulate power? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. A like and a subscription will show that you are also pondering the complex relationship between love, lust, and power forces that have shaped not only Rome, but our world today. These stories are about people at the pinnacle of power, where sex was a carefully calculated tool. But what about the common people? The laborers, the farmers, the crowds gathering in the public baths and at secret feasts? What did they seek in their pleasures, and how did they break the rules of Rome? In the next part, we will leave the palaces on the Palatine Hill to enter the world of ordinary people, secret feasts, noisy baths, and hidden corners where the lust of Rome was unleashed, not to serve power, but to seek pure pleasure. The dark pleasures. In the previous part, we witnessed how love and lust became sharp weapons in the hands of Rome's most powerful. From the geopolitical alliance of Caesar and Cleopatra to the perfect play of Augustus and Livia. The elite's bedroom was not just a place of rest, but a secret meeting room where every caress, every whisper was a move in a ruthless game of power. But that is the story of those at the top, where pleasure was tightly controlled calculated to serve political interests. What about the common people, blacksmiths, the farmers, the street vendors in Rome's bustling markets? What did they seek in their desires? And in those rare moments when they escaped the cage of society, what did they do to release their suppressed lusts? Tonight, we will leave the marble palaces on Palatine Hill. Leave the meeting rooms of the Senate to step into another world, a world of dark forests, noisy public baths, and secret feasts. This is the story of Rome's dark pleasures, where social rules were blurred, where humans and gods danced together in the dark, and where freedom came with a price that not everyone realized. Let's start with a god unlike any in Rome's official pantheon. Not the majestic Jupiter, ruler of the sky, or the warlike Mars, patron of conquests. This is Bacchus, also known as Dionysus, in Greek mythology, the god of wine, of drunkenness, of liberation from all social constraints. Bacchus was not a god of order. He was the embodiment of chaos, of primal instincts, of unrestrained pleasure. In the 2nd century BC, a secret cult-worshipping Bacchus called the Bacchanalia spread like wildfire across Italy. These rituals did not take place in magnificent temples or in broad daylight. They took place in dark forests, under flickering torchlight, where the driving beat of drums mingled with the shrill sound of flutes and crazed laughter. Imagine such a night. Wine overflowing from crude clay pots, passed from hand to hand among people from all social straight nobles, commoners, even slaves. They gathered not to discuss politics or business, but to free themselves. In the Bacchanalia rituals, they danced not the graceful dances of the court, but wild, instinctive dances, as if their bodies were possessed by the god Bacchus himself. They drank, they sang, and they immersed themselves in a state of collective ecstasy, where the individual self seemed to dissolve. In that moment, they were no longer a senator, a blacksmith, or a slave. They were just followers of Bacchus, mingling with each other and with nature in a nearly transcendent state. And in that drunken state, all boundaries were erased. The boundaries between rich and poor, between male and female, between free and slave. Even the boundaries of sexuality ceased to exist. Group orgies took place, not as an act of debauchery, but as a religious ritual, a way to connect with the primal life force of nature, with the energy of the god. For the participants, this was not a sin. This was liberation, a rare moment when they could cast off all social masks and live true to their deepest desires. Can you feel its allure? The idea of a place where you can temporarily shed all responsibilities, all expectations, and become the rawest, most primal version of yourself. A place where society, with all its harsh rules, cannot touch you. But for the Roman Senate, the Bacchanalia was not liberation. It was a mortal threat. A threat to social order, to traditional morality, and to the power of the elite. Society where slaves and nobles danced together, where women acted freely without restraint, was a society on the brink of chaos. In 186 BC, the Senate issued an emergency decree to suppress this cult. Thousands of people were arrested, tortured, and executed. The forests that once echoed with laughter and drums now only held the cries of those being hunted down. But you cannot kill a desire, though suppressed. The spirit of the Bacchanalia continued to exist in secret, hiding in the hidden corners of Roman society, waiting for a chance to rise again. Desire didn't just burn in dark forests, it also blazed right in the heart of the city, the public baths, the most vibrant social centers of Rome. To us today, a bath is a private space where we seek cleanliness and quiet. But for the Romans, the public bath was a social club, a coffee shop, a gym, and a playground all blended into one vast, magnificent space, with sparkling mosaics and steaming hot pools. People came to the baths not just to clean their bodies. They came to meet friends, discuss business, exercise, or simply to relax. And they did all of this in a state of nakedness. In the early centuries of Rome, men and women even bathed together, a practice that even later Romans debated for its morality. Imagine a vast space with marble columns glittering in the light, hot and cold pools, and hundreds of people from all social classes. Commoners, even slaves, who were allowed to attend mingling in a lively, bustling atmosphere. Here, the nakedness of the body temporarily erased class differences. A senator and a blacksmith could stand next to each other in the hot pool, chatting like friends. But that nakedness also opened up a space of temptation. Clandestine affairs sparked in the hidden corners of the baths. Sexual transactions took place openly, with prostitutes or slaves serving those with money. And for some, the baths were a place to satisfy unspoken desires, same-sex relationships, fleeting encounters, all taking place in a space where nudity made everything easier, but also more dangerous. For a free woman, especially a matrona, entering the public baths was a risky act. Although they were praised for their virtue, they were not immune to prying eyes, harassment, or even assault. The baths were a space of freedom, but also a place where the line between liberation and danger became fragile. From the fervent rituals of the Bacchanalia to the noisy public baths, the Romans seemed to have an open, almost licentious relationship with pleasure. They did not hesitate to explore their desires, did not hesitate to push the boundaries of what was considered moral. But behind the splendor of those moments was a dark truth, a reality of abuse and injustice that cannot be ignored. When we talk about the orgies in the forest, we must remember that many participants were not there voluntarily. They were slaves, forced to serve the desires of their masters, with no right to refuse, no right to protect themselves. The Bacchanalia rituals, though praised as a form of liberation, were often a stage where domination was expressed in the cruelest way. When we talk about the public baths, we must remember that the freedom here was not for everyone. For a free woman, entering the baths could mean putting herself in a vulnerable position. And for the slaves who worked there, those who mopped the floors, carried water, or served the wealthy guests, the baths were not a place of joy, but a place of servitude. And when we talk about pleasure, we must face a bitter truth. For the millions of slaves in the Roman Empire, the concept of consent did not exist. Their bodies were a tool, and their master's pleasure was an irresistible command. The sexual freedom of one group, the free citizens, the wealthy, was built on the suffering and silence of others. The idea that the splendor of Roma, the rituals, the baths, the moments of liberation was built on a foundation of injustice and violence. Does it make you uncomfortable? Does it make you wonder if the pleasures we pursue in the modern world, the parties, the entertainment spaces, the moments of freedom, are hiding similar costs? And why are humans, in any era, always drawn to the forbidden? Is it a true desire for freedom, or just selfishness disguised as joy? When we chase our pleasures, do we ever stop to think about those left behind? Those who have to pay the price for our liberation? Leave your thoughts in the comments. A like and a subscription will show that you are not afraid to face the tough questions. The questions that force us to look at both the light and the darkness of humanity. These pleasures seem to exist on the fringe of Rome's official gods, but that's not true. Human desire and the worship of the gods were always intertwined in the Roman world. In the next part, we will enter the temples of the gods, where love and lust were not just human acts, but gifts or curses from supernatural forces. Love in the shadow of the gods. In the previous part, we wandered into the dark pleasures of Rome, the ecstatic rituals of the Bacchanalia, the bustling public baths where social boundaries were erased, and the cruel truths of injustice hidden behind those moments of liberation. We saw human desire, raw and primal, burning in the hidden corners of the empire. But for the Romans, there was no clear line between the profane and the sacred. Every action, from leading an army into battle, planting a seed in the field, to exchanging a kiss, took place under the gaze of the gods. Love and lust, no matter how intense, were never just a matter for humans. They were gifts or curses from supernatural forces. Tonight, we will leave the forests and baths to enter the temples, where the gods ruled the hearts and bodies of both kings and slaves. We will explore how faith and mythology profoundly shaped the sexual lives and relationships of an empire. And we will see that, for the Romans, Lust was not just a personal desire, it was a sacred force that could bring blessings or lead to destruction. Let's start with the most powerful goddess in the realm of love and lust, Venus, for us today. Venus or Aphrodite in Greek mythology is often imagined as the goddess of romantic love, of gentle kisses and vows under the moonlight. But for the Romans, Venus was a much more complex force. She did not just preside over the sweet moments of love. She was the goddess of burning desire, of fertility, and of prosperity. The Romans believed that the grace of Venus Venia not only brought a lover, but also brought luck in business, victory on the battlefield, and prosperity for both the family and the empire. Venus was a force both creative and destructive. The love she bestowed could build great alliances, like the relationship between Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, which was believed to have occurred under the patronage of this goddess. But her love could also ignite wars, like the story of Troy, where the lust of Paris and Helen, sparked by Aphrodite, led to the fall of a kingdom. In Rome, Venus was worshipped not only as a symbol of charm, but also as a mother of the empire. The Romans believed they were descendants of Aeneas, a Trojan hero and the son of Venus, which made the goddess their sacred ancestor. Alongside Venus were lesser gods, each governing a specific aspect of lust and love. First is Cupid, son of Venus, whom we often picture as a chubby boy with small wings and a cute little bow. But the Roman Cupid was not a lovely, harmless character. He was a mischievous and sometimes cruel god, whose arrows could ignite not only love, but also obsession, jealousy, and even madness. An arrow from Cupid could make a person lose their reason, plunging into an uncontrollable passion, like the story of Dido, the queen of Carthage, who committed suicide for her unrequited love for Aeneas. In the Roman world, Cupid was not just a symbol of romantic love, he was a warning about the destructive power of lust. And then there was a lesser-known but incredibly important god to the common Romans, Priapus. He was the god of fertility, the patron of gardens, livestock, and procreation. The symbol of Priapus is an image that we might find obscene today, a statue with a giant phallus, often painted red, placed everywhere from the entrances of houses and gardens to crossroads. To us, this image might be shocking or even ridiculous. But to the Romans, it was not pornography. It was a good luck charm, a symbol of life force, of prosperity, and a weapon to ward off evil spirits and the evil eye. Priapus was worshipped not only by farmers praying for a bountiful harvest, but also by women hoping to conceive, or men wanting to assert their virility. The world of the Romans was filled with such symbols. Sex, for them, was not something to be hidden in shame or darkness. It was a part of life, a sacred energy that needed to be worshipped, but also controlled. The mosaics on the walls, the statues in the gardens, and the prayers in the temples all served as reminders that desire was a gift from the gods, but also a double-edged sword. Belief in the gods permeated every aspect of Roman life, and love and lust were no exception. Their most important rituals, from weddings to fertility festivals, were all held with the presence of the gods. Imagine a Roman wedding. It was not just a social contract or a family event. It was a profound religious ceremony designed to invoke the blessings of the gods. The bride wore a pure white tunic, her head covered with a vibrant orange veil, symbolizing fire and life. The house was decorated with fresh flowers and ribbons, and prayers were offered to Juno, the goddess of marriage and family, to ensure that the marriage would bring healthy children to continue the family line. Every step in the ceremony, from the exchange of vows to the bride crossing the threshold of her husband's home, was performed with care to avoid offending the gods. A marriage was not just the union of two people, but a sacred covenant, witnessed by supernatural forces. And then there was an older, wilder festival called Lupercalia, held every February. This was a fertility festival, originating from ancient Roman traditions. In this ritual, young priests, called the Luperci, would sacrifice a goat, skin it, and cut the hide into small whips. They would then run around the Palatine Hill wearing only a loincloth made from the goat skin. lightly whipped the women they met along the way. To us today, this act seems savage or even bizarre. But for the Romans, it was believed to bring fertility and ease childbirth. Women, including those from the patrician class, would willingly stand in the street to receive these lashes, hoping to be blessed by the gods. Sex, fertility, and faith in the Roman world were inextricably intertwined. Every intimate act carried a sacred meaning, and every ritual was a prayer for life, prosperity, and protection from the gods. But if the gods could bless, they could also punish. The Romans believed that lust, though a sacred gift, could also lead to destruction if not controlled. And nowhere was that punishment more evident than in the story of the Vestal Virgins. The Vestal Virgins were the most noble priestesses in Roman society, chosen from patrician families as young girls between the ages of 6 and 16. Their sacred duty was to keep the eternal flame in the temple of the goddess Vesta from ever going out. This flame was considered a symbol of the existence and safety of the entire Roman Empire. If the flame went out, it was believed that disaster would befall Rome. To perform this duty, the priestesses had to maintain absolute chastity throughout their 30 years of service. They were granted enormous privileges. The right to own property, the right to pardon condemned prisoners, and the reverence of living saints. But the price for this privilege was their personal freedom. A Vestal Virgin was not allowed to love, to marry, or to let desire tarnish her sanctity. If a Vestal Virgin broke her vow of chastity, the punishment was one of the most horrific deaths the Romans could devise. She was not thrown to the lions or crucified because the blood of a priestess was sacred and could not be spilled. Instead, she would be buried alive. A small chamber was dug underground, and a little food, water, and an oil lamp were placed inside. The priestess would be led down into it, and the entrance would be sealed. She would die slowly in darkness, in absolute solitude, as if the earth itself were swallowing her. This was not just a punishment for the body, but an erasure of the soul, an ultimate warning of the price to be paid for a sexual act considered blasphemous. Stories of convicted Vestal Virgins were often accompanied by rumors and controversy. Some believed they were condemned not for violating their vows, but for falling victim to political conspiracies. Accusing a Vestal could be a way for political rivals to weaken a noble family or undermine public faith in the sanctity of Rome. Whatever the truth, their story is a testament to the power of faith in controlling lust and the horrific price of going against the will of the gods. A strange world, isn't it? A world where a man could have relations with dozens of slaves without judgment? But a priestess faced a horrific death for a single moment of love or lust. A world where sex was worshipped as a sacred gift, but also punished as an unforgivable sin. Think about our world today. Though we live in a secular age, are there beliefs, whether religious, spiritual, or just the unwritten rules of society, that are still silently shaping how we view love and sex? Are ideas of purity or sin still influencing how we choose our partners, how we love, or how we judge others? Maybe it's checking horoscopes to see if two people are compatible. Maybe it's the expectations about who should be proactive in a relationship, or the prejudices about gender and roles in love. Leave your thoughts in the comments. A like and a subscription will show that you are not afraid to face the tough questions. The questions that force us to look at the complex relationship between humans, desire, and forces greater than ourselves. The gods of Rome have been forgotten. Their temples are now but crumbling ruins. Their empire collapsed long ago. But their legacy, their ideas about love, power, and lust, still silently flows in the veins of Western civilization. In the final part, we will return to ourselves. We will explore how the ancient ideas of Rome are still shaping the modern world, and ask the question, after all, how far have we really come? The legacy in our veins. In the previous part, we stepped into the sacred darkness of the Roman gods. We saw love and lust woven from ancient myths, shaped by solemn rituals, and punished by inviolable vows. We witnessed how gods like Venus, Cupid, and Priapus not only ruled the heart, but also shaped the destiny of an empire. But that is a world long past. The gods of Rome are now just names in books. Their marble temples have collapsed, becoming ruins that tourists photograph in the sunset. The Roman Empire, which once stretched from the deserts of Syria to the misty lands of Britain, is now just history lessons, stories told in museums. We, the people of the 21st century, with our smartphones, jet planes, and cities ablaze with light, seem to be thousands of years removed from them. We live in an age of science, of reason, where ancient rituals and prayers to the gods seem like mere fairy tales. But is that really true? Or does the legacy of Rome not lie in the marble slabs or the broken statues? Is it silently flowing in our veins, in the way we think, in the way we love, and in the way we build our societies? Tonight, we will no longer talk about ancient Rome. We will talk about its echoes, the ghosts of a lost empire that still quietly walk among us. In the language we speak, in the laws we follow, and in our most secret desires. This is the story of how Rome still lives, not in the ruins, but within us. Let's start with language. Something we use every day without realizing it bears the mark of Rome. When you talk about a passionate love story, what word do you use? Romance. Where does this word come from? It originates from the very name Rome, from the stories told in Latin, the language of the empire, about love, war, and glory. The word romance originally referred not just to love, but to the epic tales written in the Roman language, the stories the Romans used to define their identity. When you talk about lust, you might use the word erotic, derived from eros, the Greek god of love whom the Romans adopted and transformed into Cupid. This word carries with it not only the meaning of desire, but also the complexity of the emotions that the Romans both worshipped and feared. And when you talk about politics, you mention the Senate, the Republic, or the citizen. These are all words borrowed directly from Latin, from the way the Romans organized their society and their power. Even the concept of law, with its Latin root lex, is their legacy. These words are not just tools for communication, they are the bricks that build the way we think, the way we frame the world. The ideas of Rome have permeated our language so deeply that we no longer recognize them as theirs. Every time you speak of a romantic relationship or a republican government, you are inadvertently invoking the values, the stories, and even the contradictions of ancient Rome. But the legacy of Rome is not just in words, it is in the very way we organize our society and the rules and expectations we impose on ourselves and others. Think about the concept of marriage. Today, we may view marriage as a union of love, but for many, it is still a legal contract involving property, rights, and responsibilities. This idea stems directly from Rome, where a marriage was not just the union of two hearts, but a political, economic, and social alliance designed to consolidate power and ensure inheritance. Or think about the division between public and private space. In Roman society, the public space like the Senate or the Forum was for debate, decision-making, and demonstrating power. Like the private space like the bedroom or the home was for maintaining family honor and fulfilling personal duties. But as we have seen, this line was never truly clear. Secrets from the bedroom could be dragged into the light to destroy a politician, just as they once did to Tiberius. Today, we still see personal scandals shaking the political stage, from extramarital affairs to rumors about private lives. The line between public and private, which the Romans drew, is still a battlefield in the modern world. And then there are the gender double standards that we have explored throughout this journey. In Roman society, pudicity and virtue was the measure of a woman's morality, while virtues, masculinity, and dominance was the standard for a man. A woman had to be faithful, while a man was allowed, even encouraged, to seek pleasure outside of marriage. These ideas, though challenged by gender equality movements, still leave their echoes in modern society. Think about how a woman with many sexual partners is often judged more harshly than a man. Or how the concept of masculinity is still often associated with control, strength, and hiding emotions. These prejudices, though cloaked in modern language, still bear the mark of Rome. The legacy of Rome lies not only in language or law, it lies in the way we use love and lust as tools in our relationships in society. Look at the world of advertising today, where images of perfect bodies are used to sell everything from a bottle of perfume, a car, to a lifestyle. These images are no different from the statues of Venus or Priapus, designed to arouse desire, evoke the feeling that possessing something will bring power, charm, or prosperity. The Romans understood the power of lust in manipulating behavior, and modern advertisers are just continuing their play. And think about how we use love in our personal lives. Though we speak of love as a pure emotion, calculations of power, status, or finance still often creep into relationships. When we choose someone to love, to marry, or to share our life with, are we truly free? Or are we being shaped by the invisible pressures of society expectations about gender, class, or success? These questions, which the Romans once faced in their bedrooms and temples, still echo in our world. We may have changed our technology, fashion, and language, but the fundamental human drives the thirst for power. The complexity of love and the use of intimacy as a tool seem not to have changed much. We are still reenacting the plays of Rome, just on a more modern, splendid stage. With the light of phone screens instead of candles, our journey, which began with a whisper in a dark Roman bedroom, has now come to an end. We have walked through palaces of power, frenzied forests, noisy baths, and sacred temples. We have seen that, for the Romans, the bedroom was not just a private space. It was a battlefield, a meeting room, a stage, and a temple, where the eternal forces of love, lust, and power intersected. And now we face one final question, not about Rome, but about ourselves. If the bedroom could shape an empire, what is it shaping in our world today? Secrets, the desires, the silent power struggles in our most private spaces. How are they shaping who we are, our relationships, and our society? Pause for a moment and think. When you love, when you desire, when you make choices in your private space, are you truly free? Or are you reenacting the old plays of Rome, plays about power, about dominance, about the expectations that society places on you? Leave your final thoughts in the comments section. A like and a subscription will show that you are not afraid to face the tough questions. The questions that force us to look at ourselves and the world around us. Thank you for bravely accompanying me through the 6 parts of this journey, from the dark bedrooms of Rome to the echoes that still resonate in modern life. Your curiosity, patience, and reflections are an invaluable inspiration for stories like this. If this journey has touched you, please leave a mark, a like, a comment, or a subscription so we can continue to explore the mysteries of humanity in the long nights ahead. It is very late now, but before you go, remember that the final lesson of Rome is not in the ruins or the stories. It is within us. Humans, in any era, are always torn by the same eternal forces: love, power, and the secrets we carry into the night.
You've crossed the story. You felt every pulse in the dark, and I was there with you, quietly, always. That's why I left behind one last thing. Not to explain, not to impress, just to stay with you a little longer. A song I chose with care, as if tucking you in from across time and space. So go on, lay back, the music knows where to take you. still here, then you're something rare. Not many stay this long. So, thank you for choosing to stay. I'm here too, still awake, surrounded by the quiet glow of my editing screen, shaping the next stories just for you. If there's anything you want to leave behind, a whisper, a suggestion, even just a symbol, drop it in the comments. Because maybe, tomorrow night, you'll hear yourself echoed in a story that's never been told before. still here, even now? I have a feeling part of you is still wandering somewhere between wakefulness and dreaming. I know that feeling well because I'm still awake with you. In a quiet room, I'm gently laying out layers of sound, each breath, each beat, preparing the next journey we'll take together. If you're still listening, leave me a sign. Let me know how you're feeling or just where you are in this vast world. Because right now, in this stillness, you are not alone. You're still there, aren't you? I can't see you, but I can feel you. Like a soft signal pulsing across the silence. Over here, I'm still working, refining layers of sound, rewriting fragments of voice, building the landscape for our next adventure. One that you might inspire. If an idea comes to you, share it with me. Comment below. A theme, a memory, a strange dream. I read every word because I never tell these stories alone. I tell them with you.